From the Moscow headquarters, Radio VR, the voice of Russia.
A very good morning from all of us here at Radio VI. Mostel Winters, our top stories. Well, we're going to have a very quick look at the weather now. Well, thank goodness no snow early morning like we had yesterday. Temperatures are fairly promising today here in the Russian capital, Moscow. We're about 12 to 13 at the moment. Seems though fairly cold still because there's some wind, but it's promised to be changing into a southwesterly wind. The views of our guests are their own and, of course, are not always necessarily shared by all our editorial staff here at Radio VR.
Experts claim that climate warming may seriously influence the spheres of healthcare and agriculture. Meteorologists also noted that the last decade was the warmest in the U.S. The number of droughts and heavy downpours has rapidly increased. Such weather conditions might promote the spreading of diseases, experts believe. First of all, it's about infections and stress under the heat. The average temperature in the country has reportedly increased 1.5 degrees. Most of the warmings happen at last 30 years. Scientists believe that in another 20 years the temperature might rise 4 degrees. Experts also predict the possible rise of sea level. It may be dangerous to more than 5 million Americans living in the coastal areas. Sea rising may also destroy the infrastructure and farming industry. The report says the changes are the sign of global warming, which is the result of human activity. The White House intends to get the support of Congress in order to succeed in the environmental reform. Republicans have already opposed to the initiative, as they are convinced that climate change does not depend on human factor. The new environmental policy of the White House has already caused the reaction of coal and gas industries. Some of their representatives believe Obama's initiative is unreal.
Well, President Obama is turning to the television weather broadcasters to increase the awareness about climate change. Well, the president reportedly hopes they can help convince the public that the risks of floods and droughts is a reason to curb greenhouse gases. Now, joining me live on the line from Canada is the Executive Director of the International Climate Science Coalition, Tom Harris. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining us here in Moscow at Radio VR. May I start by approaching this report? Now, according to the report, climate change is posing a threat to people's health and well-being of every citizen in the United States. Now, do you yourself believe that Mr. Obama's plans to carry out this environmental reform would be welcomed among Americans? What do you think?
Well, there's a very split opinion. Unfortunately, it's become very politicized so that you have the people on the right wing in the Republican Party who oppose these plans and people on the left in the Democratic Party who support them. And, you know, really that's unfortunate because the science should not be politicized. We really have to look at the science and decide what nature is telling us independent of the politics. I think, though, that unfortunately it has become so polarized it's very difficult to even have a conversation about it between people who disagree. You know, our scientists, for example, some of them have had death threats as a result of simply expressing their scientific opinion that the science is unknown. You know, we really don't know the future of climate. The report that you just spoke about was based on computer climate models. Now, the trouble with those computer climate models is they've over-forecasted global warming. We were expecting to see about 0.2, 0.3 degrees warming in the last, say, 15 years. But what has happened is temperatures have pretty well stabilized. So when I talk to scientists behind closed doors, where they're not being cited in public by the press, I ask them, what is it going to be like in 20 or 30 years? Is it going to be warmer or colder? And most of them, they say to me, they say, well, ask me in 20 years. We have scientists, for example, at the Pulkovo Observatory near St. Petersburg in Russia who say that the sun is about to enter a very cold phase where we could see, in fact, global cooling going down until the middle of the 21st century. Now, I don't know if they're right either, and I don't think anybody really does. But the big problem with the climate issue is that it has become so politicized that we really hear a lot of propaganda. We hear some scientists on one side saying we know it's going to get colder, some say we know it's going to get warmer, but the truth is we really don't know at all. So what we should be doing is helping people adapt to climate change that is actually happening right now. You know, across the world, we're seeing approximately $1 billion American dollars spent every day on the climate issue. And the trouble is, most of that is going to stop what some scientists think will happen in the distant future. Only 6% of it is going to help people who are affected by climate change right now, in places like Africa where deserts are expanding, or in the north of Canada where houses are falling down because the permafrost is melting. Those people get almost no help because of the fact that we're spending money on what might happen in 50 years.
So, Tom, we have just a few seconds left, but your ideas of how this could be put into the education system?
Yes, I think that what students should be doing is encouraged to investigate the issue themselves and to make their own decisions as to which they think is right. Are we humans causing dangerous climate change, or are these natural effects that we should help people adapt for? You know, that is the kind of thing we should encourage. We should encourage creative and critical thinking so they can come to their own conclusions instead of simply telling them what the right answer is, because even the world's leading scientists don't know.
Yes, I think we should very quickly show an example of what was happening in Moscow yesterday, for instance. We woke up with snow, and then by the end of the day, it was bright sunshine and warm. You know, we went from very low temperatures in the morning, and by the evening, it was 17, 18 degrees. Well, I mean, these are interesting things to look at, aren't they, Tom?
Oh, yes, they are. And in fact, climate change always happens on every planet with an atmosphere. And certainly this time of year, we would expect to see very big changes in the course of a day. Right now in Alberta, in Canada, we still have snow on the ground, and we just experienced the coldest winter in a generation. Now, why is that happening? We really don't know. So what we need to do is focus on increasing the research and actually helping people prepare for climate change. You know, when Hurricane Sandy hit the United States, there were parts of New York City that did not lose any electricity or telephone or internet, and that's because their cables were all buried underground. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we should be doing across the world, is trying to make our infrastructure able to cope with extreme weather events. But the idea that we can stop the events from happening, that really is still just science fiction.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for joining us here at Radio VR. Joining me live there from Canada was Tom Harris, Executive Director of the International Climate Science Coalition.